So Ubisoft just announced a huge update for Ghost Recon Wildlands, which I honestly did not expect at all. I honestly thought they were going to leave it for dead, which is why I never did an updated video like I have with Breakpoint, because I heard a bunch of people saying the servers were awful and they'd stopped fixing the issues. Here we are with a new story mission which is free, a 60 FPS and 4K update for new gen consoles, a bunch of quality of life improvements and customization options, server improvements, just a massive update almost 10 years later, and on top of that it's all free, which is quite surprising knowing Ubisoft. This is all for the 25-year anniversary of Ghost Recon, which they've also heavily discounted all the games in the franchise, literally a couple pounds each, as they keep promoting it as the best time to play Ghost Recon, so it makes sense to finally do a new video returning to Wildlands. I never thought I would. I mean, I've always loved this game and it seems like a lot of people did. The reception for this one was a lot more positive than it was for Breakpoint when it first came out. It was their first time doing a full open world game in the franchise and they did a really good job out the gates. And if you haven't played it at all and are maybe more used to their linear titles, the whole idea of the gameplay is you being ordered to eliminate targets, and there's quite a few of them, all part of the Santa Blanca drug cartel who are starting to take over multiple areas of Bolivia where the game is set, and that whole presence is there for the whole game, just taking down these targets. You have like 5 main ones, so there's the 4 underbosses, which are, they usually have 4 butchons around them, as well as 1 head each, such as the head of influence, smuggling, security and production, so the different sectors basically, and these all lead into and fall under the boss of bosses, El Sueno. It goes deep into uncovering their secrets and trying to track them down, multiple missions for each target with 1 main mission at the end, as well as finding intel along with side missions and activities. It's a lot of fun and you can easily sink in so many hours. The premise has been done in other games, but it feels like this was the first to do it in such a large scale. They followed it on with Far Cry 5 and even Assassin's Creed Mirage, where you go through multiple targets and you just feel like you're progressively becoming closer. The main protagonist of course being Nomad, and I knew customization was a big thing, but it's somehow gotten even better than I remember. They actually prompted me to edit my character, I believe, but it's been so long I forgot how I left the game. So I made a new look for him and man, there's a ton of stuff to edit right from the start. Yes, some are locked, but even the base ones, like a ton of accessories and clothing items, different headgear, tattoos, makeup, backpacks and like colour variants, etc. I could go on, and as you play I'm sure you'll be adding more on and switching stuff out the more you unlock. It would have been cool to see a few more hairstyles, but then again I suppose they are limited in the military, and I always had like a mask or like goggles on with a ghillie headpiece as well, so I'd never saw my character's face anyway. There's also the classic Ubisoft outfits that nod back to older games like Splinter Cell and Ezio from Assassin's Creed, Watch Dogs as well. But the world is massive, and I believe the biggest one they had done at the time, which truly kicked off this RPG open world formula they love doing, as that was shortly followed on in Origins. The exploration is a huge highlight because you need to cover every region to meet these targets rather than just being an optional thing. The actual variety in areas isn't bad. I would have liked to see a bit more like biome diversity, but it's also Bolivia, so they have to stick with that, which makes sense. But not even just that, like the town locations and the mission areas, they can feel a bit samey after several hours. They don't all look identical, obviously, but when you have 6 missions in that one area and just the scale of this map, it's hard for them to not become a bit repetitive. The majority of the world is like countryside and stuff, similar to Far Cry 5 with Hope County, with smaller towns and bases dotted around. Lots of farmlands and mountains everywhere, and definitely a bit more full of life compared to Breakpoint. I don't know, it just felt like that game was a bit more dull in terms of the world, and because the targets are spread around the map, you're constantly traversing and eventually cover everything by the end. I always loved the dynamic weather system which makes both games, Breakpoint and this one. It did seem like it rained quite a lot and very dark, which helped that grimy tone of the missions, but then it suddenly would be sunny again. Maybe even thunderstorms. The rain is great when you're like mid-battle, and that was just added onto with Breakpoint. One day I might do like a comparison video on the two, as I think Breakpoint smoothened out some of the gameplay with better animations and stuff and more gameplay features and improved the overall look. But when you get into the plot and the type of missions and just even this gameplay, it still is amazing. Wildlands just takes the upper hand, but these visuals look incredible for an almost 10-year-old game, which I can't believe I'm saying. I think I mentioned it a few times, but it did seem like 2017 was the year year where open world games truly started to improve on a visual point of view. It just seems like there's so many big games that came out that year that still hold up incredibly well now, and this one is no exception. I also forget how well the driving mechanics were in terms of them just being easy to use but still looking natural and not so arcade-like. Much easier to handle than other games, and with you having to do so much traversing, I'm glad it was smooth navigating the roads and stuff for the most part. They could be more realistic in terms of like weight and their turning, but at least with this you know you won't crash as much and don't have to calculate how a turn will be or whatnot. Now, as I said, both games have a similar mission design, and I think that's my biggest complaint for this one. I mean, with the endless amount of targets to take down spread throughout the world, and that being the only task you have for the entirety, especially if you focus on the main story, then the variety in what you're given to do can be quite straightforward and nothing crazy. The earlier missions with each target are either like scanning intel, interrogating a person, or stealing something, but then the actual main mission isn't totally different, and they tend to all follow a similar method, like shooting a target mixed in with a wave of enemies, or defending an area for a period of time, or escorting a person, etc. It just would have been nice to see a bit more variation. Some might be fine with it because the gameplay and the overall feel of the game is truly fun, but it all depends on how much that can keep you engaged. And sometimes it is just nice to hop on and play for a few hours just to live in this world and explore, rather than making sure to grind through every mission. It's kind of up to you on how you want the game to play, which brings me on to the whole customization option and the gameplay features. These sandbox type games and tactical shooters, they always are up to you and how you want to approach a certain mission. A very common pattern in the Ubisoft games, Wildlands does quite well at that. You can choose to go stealthily or loud and guns blazing, which way you want to enter a base or something, what vehicle you want to approach in and leave in, the weapons you choose, etc. And items are always unlocked. Later on you can get a parachute to enter from above, which was another great method, and that's just a few examples. The weapons are unlocked through killing enemies and taking theirs, or through the leveling system with XP. Such a list of weapons, I won't go through all of them. I mean, the numbers alone being 23 ARs, 8 LMGs, 16 SMGs, 16 snipers, 8 shotguns, and 17 handguns, which is insane. The actual gun mechanics themselves isn't anything unique, but they do feel incredibly smooth and clean when using them, especially in stealth. There's a ton of customization in weapons as well, with attachments to unlock, making them stronger or easier to handle. They vary quite a bit with like recoil and bullet drop off, they don't hold back on that. Again, attachments can fix that. There's a skill tree system as well, which will freshen up gameplay with new items and boosts to many areas. It can give you stuff like the parachute, as I mentioned, but also mines, different lures, C4s, thermal vision, etc. Another great way to differently approach missions. And yeah, I think that's where most of the fun comes from, just that freedom and just the way you can experiment with these black box type missions they have, which honestly it was a big reason why I love games like Assassin's Creed and something they do quite well at. I wouldn't say the unlocks and stuff are like overwhelming or anything because there's so much, and to be honest, for the most part I did use the same weapon, or maybe a sniper or something, which felt fine with mixing that in with different gadgets and stuff. So it's up to you and your preference really. And the customization doesn't stop there, as you can alter the weapon appearance with paint jobs on not only the base model but the attachments as well. Just so much detail. And we have to mention the teammate side of things. You can of course play with other online players or your friends in co-op, which is always fun, or you're playing solo with an AI squad. And they aren't terrible when I played. I mean, you can order them to assault or direct them to go places, which does help a lot when you want to target a certain person or a vehicle, and there is quite a few of those missions. If done correctly, you can ping an enemy and sync shots together to take a target down, like really quickly and silently, which is quite satisfying. Not always a success though for me. There's been a few times where they've alerted guards and stuff when I've tried not to, so stealth is a bit more difficult with them, and I suppose that makes it more rewarding when it does work. It can be a challenge though, it's not some easy alternative or anything, and it takes a bit of skill to use them to your advantage properly. Sometimes they can take ages to get into vehicles, but if you drive away, they will just teleport. Some could say that also takes away the immersion of it all, I guess. I found them to be decent at defending when I did fall down. It wasn't like too long until they revived me, so I didn't have to restart the whole mission. I know I mentioned about how they sometimes got me spotted, unless it was me and I just didn't realise, but sometimes it's the complete opposite and they can stand right in front of an enemy and they won't be alerted, which definitely would take away the immersion and the challenge of it. Now I'm going to mention the story of the game. I left it till the end because, to be fully honest, in terms of the whole narrative, it isn't a major part of the game, at least for me it wasn't. It heavily focuses on the open world and the freedom of it all, rather than like a linear storyline, with like a super in-depth character and a rich plot line. But like I said, Nomad is part of a team of ghosts with the main task of taking down this Santa Blanca drug cartel. You're teamed up with Bowman, a CIA agent who will talk to you and direct you as you progress, basically leading everyone and plans the missions out I mentioned earlier. So in a way, she does the most and the one you're closest with. Some could say that because Nomad is just taking in these orders and doing them, he isn't really much of a character in himself, which has been a common theme with Ubisoft, where the main protagonist is mute or just doesn't feel that special to the story, whereas the side characters or the villains, they do the most. For Wildlands, it was clear that this game isn't story driven. There's only a few cutscenes, most of these being the videos about who the target is and how the mission will play out beforehand. But those videos do actually give a lot of information and are quite helpful because they add context and show why you need to take them down. And Bowman is good at showing that, so her character is good in that sense. So that's an example of the other characters or aspects of the game improving the story. However, the main antagonist and leader of the cartel, Al Swango, is quite good because he just isn't that present, but you like slowly work up towards him for the most part of the game. But then that also makes him be this like mysterious character who you know is important. And it's clear he is super powerful because, I mean, he's the one who controls the entire thing and almost rules the entire country with the cartel. So as you move through each target, you're slowly chipping away at him and taking it down, which builds up until the very end, which I won't say much more about. So not really complaints as such with what you're given in the story, and I didn't mind because of the type of open world gameplay style it has. Just it being a bit more present would have been nice. And I believe that's where I end my review of Ghost Recon Wildlands. If you did enjoy this video, then let me know by tapping that like button down below. And if you enjoy single player and multiplayer games as well, then that's what this channel does focus on. I have many playlists on a selection of games. And if you want to support me any further, you can become a member of the channel at either level 1 or 2 to gain access to various perks. Thank you all for the support, and for anyone that drinks G Fuel, you can use my code COWSY at checkout for a discount on your order. And that was Ghost Recon Wildlands in 2026, and bye bye.